programs. The objective of this session is really to exchange about the achievements and difficulties of territorial cooperation for Isle and outermost regions as well, and reflect on the new cohesion package for the post-2020 period. We have a small panel of experts, which I'll introduce in a minute. I must tell you already that we have one of the speakers who unfortunately was unable to make it for today, and that's Dario Tornabene from Sicily region. He has sent a very interesting contribution on the future of ETC, which I have read, and it's extremely interesting, and we are happy to circulate it to everybody if you're interested. So we'll have a debate with two speakers I'll introduce in a minute, but first, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Marie-Antoinette Maupertuis. You're a member of the Committee of the Region, rapporteur on the future of the European Territorial Cooperation Programme. So we're very keen to hear from you. First of all, the main lines of your report. I think a lot of us know what you defend, but it'd be nice and useful to have a reminder of what you defend in that report, and perhaps also an informal update on the way you see the negotiations between the Parliament and the Council, and any personal reflections you may have on that subject. So you have the floor.
Thank you, Nicolas. I will follow in French.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank CPMR for the kind invitation, and of course thank you to Corfu and the region of Ionian Islands for hosting us in such a warm way. I would like to talk about the European territorial cooperation. Right now we have a new regulation, a new program for the European territorial cooperation. I'm talking about the new programming period 2021-2027. So this new ETC had been, for the time being a part of the cohesion policy. We have discussed it rather extensively today and yesterday. It develops around three main strands and axes. I would like to remind you of the main amendments that have been introduced by the European Commission during its latest proposal. The first aspect has to do with collaboration at national level, collaboration among the member states. And we have both interregional and cross-border collaboration. Needless to say that no matter the axis under which this ETC operates, it has substantial added value. We all know about Interreg programs. Those programs are well known among European citizens, no matter their place of residence. Either we talk about cross-border or any other type of program. If you ask around the European Union, you will see that Erasmus and Interreg are the two most well-known programs among the citizens. So there's an extensive knowledge about those programs that have proven their added value. To my point of view, in light of the Euroscepticism and the Brexit conditions that we are currently living, well, we know that those programs have strong symbolic value. Apart from financial interest, they also boost cooperation among nations. Now, when it comes to the content of the European Commission's proposal, I would like to remind you of the usual architecture and structure with regard to European Territorial Cooperation Programme. The Commission made a proposal for the review of this agenda, and for right now all the programs have been reduced budget-wise, but the Commission has changed the architecture of the territorial cooperation structure. So we have both good and bad surprises. And we see that there's a tendency to simplify some cases with regards to what is important, what is not. This has been a standing request of the managing authorities. This is very important. I'm talking about simplification, homogenization of procedures. And why is that? Because territorial cooperation includes a regulation that also involves principles of good neighboring. We're not only talking, therefore, about particular regions. It's also important about the outermost regions and regions such as Andalus. They're neighboring with Morocco. So, this is a good example. We're talking about case of collaboration with third countries, and we want such a cooperation to be cohesive. This is what we talk when we speak about territorial cooperation programs. Another pleasant surprise has been the fact that rather than having 3 dimensions, we now have 5 dimensions, 5 pillars. The Commission has added a new aspect referring to the outermost regions. Well, apparently we believe that this has been a fair request because the outermost regions have their own specificities. Those specificities have been recognized, and therefore the ETC program is trying to adapt to those specificities. And we also have the people-to-people programs. This part of the Committee of the Regions programs, well, those programs are not programs amounting to 3 million euro or anything else, but nonetheless, there are programs that allow federations to cooperate, bring small-scale projects partners together. I'm talking about programs that are directly relevant to the citizens, programs that offer added value on a daily basis. And now we have the opportunity to set up projects with a budget of less than 150,000 euro. That's highly positive. And another pleasant surprise is the creation and the establishment of a 5th pillar that has to do with the inter-regional investments in innovation. I'm talking about a pillar that has received funding of almost up to 2.6 billion euro. It has to do with inter-regional cooperations regarding innovation. This has also been a request by the regions in order for the inter-regional networks to work on projects that have to do with research, technological applications, etc. So now we're talking about the positive elements, like I said before. And in this case, we know that collaboration is now possible with local authorities, organizations, agencies, and many people think that this financing volume, as well as the new opportunities for cooperation, raise some points of concern. There is an overall reduction of the budget. We had been expecting that, but anyway, reduction is more severe than we expected. I'm talking about the Interreg program. The reduction proposal provided for a reduction of 83% for some regions. So you understand that this has affected many regions. Another point that was brought forward during the previous session, maritime cooperation. For the time being, it had been part of cross-border cooperation. Now, maritime cooperation has moved under the pillar of cooperation among member states. And when we talk about insular regions, you know that the proposal that has been submitted is not very satisfactory, because maritime cooperation, they think, should have remained within the framework of cross-border cooperation. And why is that? Because the sea is a border equal to the land border. So, therefore, this cooperation, the neighboring areas, should be allowed to cooperate rather than bringing this up to the level of cooperation among the member states. Everyone agreed unanimously that this is a mistake, so that was over. All the proposals submitted about this scenario proposed by the European Commission when it comes to our meeting in the framework of the Committee of the Regions, COR, included discussions with CPMR and was based on the following principles. First of all, territorial cooperation should be beneficial for all regions with no exceptions. Furthermore, this cooperation should be easy to implement. If it is too difficult for field workers to establish the right file, then there's a problem, something has been done wrong. Thirdly, we need to work on a rationale of work across multiple levels. And we need to work on the basis of the principle of complementarity. We want to have a set of actors working together, discussing together, planning their projects jointly. In light of all the proposals by those who participate in this meeting, we wanted to make some remarks about all 5 pillars. First of all, when it comes to the Interreg program and the fact that we wanted it to be maintained along with a specific aspect of this program, well, we move forward with raising our objections, and I believe that it is imperative to preserve the Interreg program. It's a fight that we have not lost yet, but in light of Euroscepticism and Brexit, we need to boost what has been proven to work and be effective. We need to boost cooperation among the people. This is fundamental. What is more? Maritime cooperation. We ask for the maritime cooperation to return to the cross-border cooperation pillar on the basis of the principle of complementarity and on the basis of the fact that we need to be pragmatic about it. When we are in the sea region, well, we collaborate with the neighboring areas, okay, that's something that happens. It's normal, so the cross-border character is there, one way or another. And therefore, the proposals of the European Commission must be respected with regards to proposals with regards to sea basins, and if not, then maybe we should refrain from participating in such a project if we're not 100% happy about it. We need to redefine sea basins without depriving the islands from their role and position in those regions. And of course, we need to respect cohesion with the macro-regional policies and strategies when it comes to innovation pillar. That's great news. Some people were surprised about it. This pillar of innovation with this amount of €1 million is not included in the traditional territorial cooperation program. It's something that has to do with the technologically developed areas, technologically developed regions, that fall under the description of Article 174. Islands are included there. And they can participate in this fifth pillar. The European Commission has accepted it in principle, but we also need to be cautious. And it seems, as we saw this morning when we talked about biodiversity and energy transition, so it seems that islands can have innovative systems. There are open laboratories with regards to waste management, water management, energy transition, fishing resources. It's very important for the articles that fall under the description of Article 174 to rise up and have their roles strengthened. Lastly, when it comes to the co-financing rates, this percentage can amount up to 85%. The European Parliament proposed a rate of up to 80%, but anyway, we have gone above the 70% financing that was the previous case. And apparently our partners are not, could really use this money. So, when it comes to the Commission's proposals, we wanted to allow for all those programs to move beyond the state subsidy, the state aid framework, because if something is granted and then we fall under the rationale of state aids, then you know that this will not be effective and will create more difficulties. The main idea is to have things simplified. This has been the rationale behind the Commission's proposal, and this is what we at the COR have proposed. And in conclusion, I would like to say that insular communities should stay vigilant. There are discussions that will be held at the European Parliament next week as well. Nothing has ended, nothing has completed. Isabel Thomas said this morning that the next discussions and negotiations will be held next fall, maybe later. So we need to stay alert as to maritime cooperation related issues. And we need to have a specific agenda in order to make sure that maritime cooperation remains at a national level. So, if they insist on that, we should have a plan B for islands. Well, like I said, it's a plan B case. When it comes to the fifth pillar, we need to preserve the significance of the IMI and the ITI program and instruments. I'm talking about cross-border investments, and it's very important that all areas that fall within the scope of Article 174 do participate there. It is of the essence in order for those regions to stay innovative and move forward. I would like to conclude by saying that territorial cooperation in the EU is another solution, another source of financing that can help the regions, and in light of the imminent Brexit, we need to further boost the pillars on the basis of which we are going to build our common European future and perspective. Thank you very much.
Parce que je pense que ça...
I will try to summarize what you've been said. Anyway, I would like to remind you, since that we talked about budget, that our first reaction when we heard about the cuts, the budget cuts, was that we shouldn't forget that during the current programming period, member states rejected by 25% this cut. So the Commission proposal for 2014 to 2020, the member states managed to avoid some cuts. We said that if the Commission starts with an already reduced budget, what will happen at the end? Now, I will turn to English.
Right, I mean, you've said everything, Marie-Antoinette, so I'm really not going to spend a lot of time on this because you've very clearly explained what our concerns are, the Committee of the Region, the CPMR. We have a very common position, actually, on a number of themes. The only thing I would say that hasn't been said already is in relation to the allocation methodology for the territorial cooperation strand. We were very happy about Pascal Harimon's report, which essentially took on board our messages, particularly on maritime cross-border cooperation. We would have liked Mrs. Krell, Mr. Novakov, the co-rapporteurs on the Common Provision Regulation, to change the Annex 22 to reflect the architecture that we want, which is essentially back to the current architecture. They haven't done it. We tried to speak to Mrs. Krell about it, but she was a little bit reluctant to open the... I'm looking at Isabelle Thomas here. She was a bit reluctant to look at the allocation methodology for structural funds, but I believe this is one of the things that we need to remain vigilant on, and you've mentioned that already, Marie-Antoinette. Perhaps to stress also the cooperation with non-EU countries, and that's also part of your report, Mrs. Maupertuis, so I won't dwell on that too much, but we at CPMR, we were very keen to ensure that the doors open for the UK, if they so wish, and it's not looking very likely at this stage, if I'm honest, to participate in Interreg programs in the future. And linked to that with Component 5, we're a little bit concerned that, and this is one of the things that we discussed at the last core group meeting, and you were there in Brussels with the permanent representations, if Component 5 is brought back under the ERDF, there needs to be something in there to guarantee that UK members, Norwegian members, non-EU members can chip in, can participate in Component 5. The rest you've already said, so I won't dwell on that too much. I will finish with my favorite subject, which is this wonderful map. The Commission was very happy to see that, of course, because we unravel what they didn't want us to show to the world, which is the very secret allocation methodology for the component 2B, which essentially puts, as I said yesterday already, I'm repeating myself, but which essentially proves that there is no methodology that will stand the test of time when it comes to allocating funds to member states for maritime cross-border cooperation, transnational cooperation. Because essentially, as I said yesterday, the blue regions are all NUTS 3 maritime region. The orange ones are the ones that are taken into account to calculate the member states' shares for component 2B. And you can see there is very little logic, and there's many islands or parts of islands that are missing. I don't know why that's the case. The good news is, as I said yesterday, this will change. We need to make a proposal, I believe, to the new Parliament and to the Council as well, to make sure that whatever comes next is in line with the architecture that we're defending, which is what you explained a minute ago. I could speak for hours about the subject, but this is the last session, so I won't dwell on that too much. I really want to introduce our two guests very quickly to ask for their opinion on these interesting issues. I will start with Marika Nietepold, you're head of managing authority of the Central Baltic Programme. And I remember the first time we met, Marika, I think it was in May, and you came to us to ask what the CPMR was going to do to save maritime cross-border programs. So you were one of the main actors in that regard. So please tell us what you think about these issues, and also we're very keen to understand what your perspective is in terms of incorporating the island dimension, as I believe you have done. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Obviously, this is a topic I could also spend a long time on, so just interrupt me when my time has come. But I mean, this is something I'm very passionate about. I've been introducing myself to people here as someone who's Finnish Estonian by heritage, born in Sweden, raised in Sweden. So I'm essentially a Central Baltic citizen. And for me, the lunacy, if I may speak frankly, in not considering the sea a border as any other border is just beyond belief. So when we heard indications of how the Commission is thinking, we very naturally reacted, and also I must say we had a very strong support from our regions, many of which are here also today. So there was a very strong feeling in the Central Baltic region, which you can see on the map, that something needs to be done about it, and our regions mobilized, and I have been pushed to the forefront and have been trying to meet people and share our opinions. Maybe just a few words about the map. You see that we have regions from Finland, Estonia, Sweden, Latvia, and the Åland Islands are actually treated as a member state in our case, so we talk about 5 member states. The islands are a very big part of our program. Latvia is the odd one out. Latvia has no islands whatsoever, but the other countries have thousands and thousands. And the Central Baltic program history actually is very much built on island cooperation. So in the period before 2007, there had been 2 Interreg programs. There was the Islands and Archipelagos cooperation between Sweden, Åland, Finland, and there was the Southern Finnish-Estonian cooperation. When we came to the 2007-13 period, the Commission, together with Member States, also had the idea of being more effective, putting things together. So these 2 programs were merged essentially into one, and Latvia was added. So this bigger geography was already formed then. But about the islands, maybe to say that our program is very result-oriented. We are very focused. So we have, from the beginning, when we have looked at what things to work with, how do we spend our 124 million euros in an efficient way, we have looked at the need of the regions. And in that, I must say that the islands have been very vocal. They have been very much giving input to both the content but also the structure of our program. So we have elements in both the management but also in the setup of projects themselves. So we have a small project fund, for instance, set up mainly for island small communities. That maybe to start off with.
Thank you very much. And the first question that comes to mind, of course, is what you're planning to do next in the next period. And I believe that the first battle needs to be won with the help of Marie-Antoine de Maupertuis and others in the Parliament to safeguard the maritime cross-border programs. But once that battle is won, because it will be won, I think we are supported by the Council and the Parliament. What do you plan to do in the next period? Should there be a Central Baltic program to incorporate that island dimension? Do you have already plans in mind or things that you'd like to do better than the current period?
Yes, always want to do things better. The idea, I mean, we understand the realities probably will be, well, first of all, we do believe now that we will be able to continue thanks to the support of many in this room, actually. But the plans then would be, we understand that probably we will have less money at our disposal. To be fair, I think this is the smallest of our problems. We can live with less money. What we plan to do, as far as I understand from discussions with our member states, is to focus even more, to be even more result-oriented, to be even more close to the needs of the regions. So really to listen to the regions and identify what are the key issues that with, let's say, 80 million, 90 million, 100 million within 7 years we can actually achieve. So this is our wish to not only meet and discuss, but really find where we can bring about change and impact in the region. The themes as such are not identified yet. I think we will also try very much to listen to the Commission's concerns and try to avoid overlaps with, say, the Baltic Sea region programme or other programmes, so really find the niche for this cross-border cooperation.
Very good, thank you very much. Maybe we'll come back to you if you have any other thoughts. Please let us know in the context of this debate, of course. I would like to introduce our second distinguished guest, Rui Betancourt, Deputy Regional Secretary to the Presidency of the Government of the Azores, and you're here to give us a little perspective from the perspective of an outermost region, so you have the floor.
Merci Nicolas. Permettez-moi de...
Thank you very much, Nicolas. Well, some first comments. I would like to thank President Simeoni as well as all the colleagues and fellow panelists. I would also like to thank Mr. Gagliatsatos for hosting us in the wonderful city of Corfu. I would like to say this. We are in a very important moment of the European structure. It is a structure that has been depleted in various ways, so we wonder where we will find ourselves over the next months. Will we find ourselves in a crossroads? Or are we going to find ourselves in a different crossroads that will further awaken us in the mid and longer term? So, over the next weeks, over the next months, developments will be very important. We have to mobilize our citizens so that they commit themselves in favor of United Europe. Like Madame Thomas said this morning, this is very important. The crisis that will emerge will be severe. So we need to mobilize people out of this moment in order for them to perceive the real dimensions of the European future. Answers are there, are in front of us. So we need to grasp all the power that we have in our hands and try to oppose the cohesion policy proposed by the European Commission. This morning we said that we talk about reduction of the budget given to the regions. This is something that really bothers me. And it is the first time that has been bothering me so much, because we see that the budget of the smallest regions are even smaller than they were in the past. And that's the main point and main source of disappointment and grief. Well, our islands are rocks, rocks having people on them, having souls on them. And those souls are European citizens who wish to enjoy the same rights with the remaining European citizens. And it is our mandate to respond to those needs through responsible policies and being able to rise on the occasion. And over the next minutes, I'm going to talk about two very concrete topics. The first thing has to do with the Interreg program. It has to do with Azores. It's the Interreg MAC program. We collaborated with our colleagues from Madeira, and it is a broad region. Those programs refer to the broad region of the Azores, the islands of the Micronesia, as it's called. So we will also say a couple of things about the next cooperation program. I'm talking about the territorial cooperation program, expanding of the years 2021-2027. Now, when it comes to the Interreg MAC program, it is a 250 million euro program. It has 5 action plans. It focuses on cooperation between Madeira, Canary Islands, and Azores. I know that those islands might be small, but believe me, they cover a substantial surface of the sea around the European Union. Therefore, there are specific issues and interests of those islands. So, a 250 million euro program, we're interested in innovation, research. We know that this is very important. Climate change is a standing point of consideration. Let us not forget about the super regions. My friends from Saint Martin could elaborate on this topic. So all those issues that have to do with efficacy should also be considered. You understand that this money is going to be distributed among the beneficiaries and the managing authority that we have, the Canary Islands. But apart from the financial issues, there is an equally important point that needs to be considered. As to now, this issue has not been considered seriously. There is a political approach to those regions. We meet very often. We have already met 5 to 6 times, so we have drafted and signed memoranda of agreement in order to underline and highlight our priorities. And therefore, this approach has helped us understand many things. First of all, there is an important role that each and every one of us holds, and that's why it's very important to cooperate. Tourism, imports, exports, we have learned to work together. And we need to come closer to each other. We need to approach each other and work on a complementary basis. I believe that this is something that should be done regardless of the geographic distance between our islands. Through the Interreg MAC program, we have been supporting each other, and there is also the Intergrar program. We try to determine the complementary role we hold towards each other and how we can cooperate through common efforts. We have very close perspectives with regards to innovation and research, and we wanted to cooperate under the International Research Center. There are 30 member states over there. Micronesia is included there. People from Canary Islands, from the Azores, and of course, in combination with the spatial policy that is in place, you know that we collaborate in order to move forward. I would just like to say a few words now about the next programming period. First of all, there is a very important perspective with regards to how we can strengthen those regions. We know that there's a standard procedure. We will see how things turn out, but we know that there are some pending affairs. We are used into being pessimistic about things, but we need to wait. We need to wait and see what will happen, what happens with the European elections. We know the challenges are there, and those challenges have to do with transport. We know that the transport is a major point of concern for all islands. If we want islanders to be citizens enjoying equal rights with the citizens of mainland Europe, we want the issue of transport to be resolved. This is very important. It is equally important to deal with innovation. If each of our islands is able to innovate with regards to energy reserves management, to how they're able to tackle waste management issues, then those examples are examples that we can learn from. And of course, we cannot expect having everything resolved by the government. We need to opt for a central solution and a solution that is based on cooperation among the islands. It's a political neighboring approach. We want to have a joint approach and see what we can achieve. Synergies are very important. We need to capitalize on this opportunity. If we want to address problems, we need to start meeting each other, discussing, and coming up with solutions. Thank you very much. I believe that you managed to perfectly describe the significance of neighboring and the proximity between policies and politicians so that we can address those solutions. I would like to say that Interreg is a very beneficial program, and I know that those solutions can be found through those synergies and cooperations. Commissions can provide us with excellent gifts when it comes to the conclusion of these programs.
Floor, but the floor is open now for any questions or anybody who wants to comment. Je pense qu'on a une demande de la part de Saint-Martin-Rudia Lake.
There is a request from Saint-Martin. I would just like to talk about the presentation of Mr. Betancourt. Further to his presentation, I would like to talk about Saint-Martin. We are a French island, and for the first time, we benefit from the operational program of cross-border transnational cooperation. We have a portfolio of 10 million euros managed by the region. It has 3 priority pillars. The first pillar is focused on on water management and on waste management. The second pillar concerns the protection and utilization of environment. It is a joint management program about the lake located on the part of the island that belongs to France and the part of the island that belongs to Netherlands. We also participate in the Interreg Caribbean 5 program. Unfortunately, our colleagues from Guadeloupe could not attend. It is a program of 65 million euros managed by the Managing Authority of Guadeloupe. We have also there is a cross and transnational aspect where Guadeloupe, Saint-Martin and Guyana participate, as well as other Caribbean regions. The transnational pillar also is joined by La Martinique. And when it comes to 2020 target, as Mr. Betancourt said, of course we are very happy to see the EC proposals around the third pillar. The third pillar needs to be clarified. I would like to remind you that Saint-Martin aims to further collaborate, further enhance our cooperation with Saint Martin. So we want an expanding transnational cooperation, especially in a context of reconstruction. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to make an intervention? I think that the session on Interreg is at the end of the day. Maybe this is why we don't have so fervent participants.
To say something? Nadia, do you want to say something?
Juste un mot pour dire que je souscris totalement à ce qu'a dit Rui Betancourt.
I would just like to say that I fully agree with what Rui Betancourt said. We shouldn't expect everything from the Commission. we shouldn't always wait for the others. We should have a joint project, a joint program. And if I have understood something, it's exactly that. And I'm talking about President Simeoni, our cooperation with the Balearic Islands, with Madeira. Sicily did exactly the same thing. They worked with us. These are steps that were taken because we wanted to seize the opportunity based on the principles of complementarity. I would also mention the great work done by the outermost regions. I need to congratulate you. I see the work done by Tenerife. Sometimes you are thousands of kilometers away from us, but it's absolutely true that your work is marvelous, and it's not something that we can easily understand. So this is the essence of complementarity. This is the essence of fighting together, especially when it comes to green economy, renewable energy sources. So wherever in Europe you might be, either in the Adriatic Sea, the Baltic Sea, the Ionian Islands, the Aegean Islands, wherever you might be, you need to cooperate. We need to cooperate. And since we have identified this shared strategy, because I think I said that the territorial cooperation needs to be consistent with the smart strategy of each region. So we need to be on the alert. And since this roadmap and these objectives have already been set, then we can really demand the assistance and the support of the European Commission and the member states to which we belong. But the prerequisite is, of course, our request to be within the limits of this shared strategy, and we will continue to fight to further improve the means and instruments that we have available. Let me remind you that the amount for territorial cooperation was reduced to 8 million, and the European the European Parliament demanded for an increase to 11 billion. Thank you, Nanette.
No? Okay, well, I think we can, I'm looking at my boss here. I think we can perhaps conclude this session. I think I'll come back to what Marie-Antoinette told us at the very beginning. I think we need to remain vigilant. And Jean Didier's presentation yesterday, it is a battle, it is a fight. We've won a few battles along the way with the support of the European Parliament. Just a thought, by the way, because if the member states cut the Interreg budget to a point where it doesn't make any sense to have so many components, then we'll have a problem. We're not there yet, but it's just to say that it's something we need to fight for, and with your help. And I will perhaps give the floor to. Would you like to? Okay, so I wanted to also perhaps. So I want to conclude this session. So thanks to our speakers. I think we can join them to clap their interventions, because I think they were very, very, very good. And
merci beaucoup, Nicolas. Maintenant, la parole à nos présidents.
Thank you, Nicolas. Now, could you please close this session? Before that, I would like to seize the opportunity to thank you for your presence, and let me remind you that we work for you, and we count on your support, because you need to support our work politically, and I know you're there for us.
Governor, do you want to... yeah.
Ήθελα στο τέλος αυτή.
So, At the end of this process, I would also like to thank all participants under any capacity, and I would also like to thank our President, Gilles Simeoni, the Deputy Minister of Insular and Maritime Affairs, Mr. Santorinès, our EMP, Ms. Isabel Tomas, for providing such important information, Ms. Eleni Marianou, the Secretary General of CPMR, and of course Nicola Brooks and Giuseppe Sciacca. I believe that everybody witnessed those 2 days, the provision of information, the submission of proposals, the sharing of best practices, but we also identified the obstacles to be tackled. It is extremely positive that we managed to deal with these issues related to our island specificity, issues such as accessibility, sustainable tourism, circular economy, energy, transport, biodiversity. Also, it's extremely positive that we dedicated time to the most important issues that we might be faced with, which is cohesion policy, of course, and the problems around territorial cooperation. It's my conviction that this 39th General Assembly of our Commission contributed greatly to in-depth understand island problems and regional problems, and at the same time to prioritize our needs and design the direct actions and activities of the regions and of our Commission. I think we've all understood that there are 2 main things to be done. First of all, an effort directed to our governments to adopt our views on cohesion and insularity, and the second thing to be done is a more general effort to make clear that we won't tolerate the degradation of our role in policy making, because these policies concern our own regions. Dear friends, I hope you've enjoyed yourselves. I hope you've had a great time. I wish you the best time tonight and tomorrow. Have a safe trip back home, and au revoir.
Monsieur le Président, Galiatsatos, Monsieur le Secrétaire.
So, Mr. Galiatsatos, Secretary General, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I would like to thank you all. Thank you for hosting this General Assembly. We're very lucky to enjoying your island. Most of us have promised to return on your island again. Thank you, a great thank you to the interpreters for their work. I would also like to thank the management of the conference who hosted us all those days. I would like to thank CPMR groups, Giuseppe, and those who have already left, and Gael. Oh, okay, are you still with us? Excellent. Okay, I saw you. Thank you all. So, I would like to say that there's a nostalgia wandering around the room because we have had brilliant 48 hours. Thank you all. I believe that the island of Saint Martin is here with us, French Polynesia as well, and the map that we saw this morning is very important. We discussed all the issues of concern. We talked about the outermost regions, insularity, complementarity. all those are the new aspects, and we need to consider insularity very seriously. There are some pending issues that are very important. Anyway, that was all. I would also like to thank the MEP that we had with us today. She clarified some pending questions. And now, I believe that this seminar, this meeting, had a very busy agenda, very full agenda, with a panel of different specialists. This is indicative of the fact that we move forward together at all levels, level of action, level of methodology, level of thinking. And this is very important because in that way we will be able to convince the Commission and the Parliament that we do have arguments. Well, gaps are always on the agenda. However, all the work that has already been done is substantial, and I think that we can do even more. So, we are here, united, we move forward. And I would like to add something else. We know the times are difficult. My colleague here on the right has already said that. We're standing at a crossroads. I know the decisions that we'll make or not make will be binding us for many years to come, and they will create the framework in which we will be moving for the next years. So, I believe that Marie Antoinette, it is the first time that we see that there is hope. If we work together, if we consider insularity even more seriously through the various interventions that we will be able to make at the Commission, we will have the opportunity to have hopes of a better future. We have the tools. The creation of a special financial instrument for the islands will be helpful, of course, and we need to clarify the points that remain vague. And when it comes to Canary Islands and Azores, I believe that we need to move forward in a complementary way. I know there are outstanding issues, there are pending affairs, things that need to be addressed. Personally, I believe that today we have discussed about every region, but when we talk about the outermost regions or the ultra-peripheral regions, we need to consider them as equal regions. We need to follow the same pace, have the same strategies. Okay, I know that slight differentiations are on the agenda. We know that. It's normal, but this is for organizational reasons only. We saw what happened in the case of Sardinia. This could also happen with Crete or other islands. But I believe that complementary actions should be planned always under the umbrella of CPMR, and always in light of the specificities of any island. And the last point I would like to make, among the various privileged areas, there are joint actions to be held in order to reinforce the other regions and be there, constantly vigilant and alert towards the decisions of the Commission. And I believe that the results of the European elections will help us further boost this relation and the quality of this relation. And I would like to say that the circular economy issue and waste management is equally important. The same applies for energy, particularly for the non-interconnected regions. We cannot talk about sustainable development unless we are able to resolve all those issues. So, small is beautiful, we know that. And we need to ensure that the future in Europe will be better. And I call upon you all to pick up your sleeves, do whatever you can, everything in your capacity. We know each other, we appreciate and respect each other, we have worked together. It's very important having a very strong commission, so we need all together to share ideas, do this benchmarking. And I know that this is very important. We want to innovate. We want to be there for our citizens. I believe that next year will be a difficult year, a full year, but when we know that the result will be our next meeting at Azores next year, then things are not that bad after all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. And the last message for today. You'll find a form, printed form about the social agenda. You can find it in front of you. It is a social event for today and tomorrow. If you want to participate, you will find all the useful information there. Thank you.